I got all I want, and I got all I need, and I got everything. I got you and me. All I want.
Marriage is the best. Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about marriage and mentorship. I was thinking about divorce actually, and yeah, the big D. I was thinking about divorce the other day and thinking about how it's impacted my life and my wife's life and so many other people's lives, how destructive it is, how it takes so much from the individuals involved. Obviously, how destructive it is for kids, which I think we're all pretty aware of at this point, that divorce really hurts kids, and fatherless homes, really, really destructive to kids, whether you measure that by suicide rates, whether you measure that by child homelessness, mental health, whether you measure that by crime rates, like fatherlessness is awful. It's awful for kids, and divorce is awful for people. Now, obviously, with the caveat that divorce is necessary at times, very necessary. And in our second episode, we talked a little bit about when marriages are kind of awful and there's a lot of like abuse or neglect, abandonment, and when the four horsemen are present, and just how that creates a really nasty situation in a marriage, and then how that obviously is not the best for the people involved. But divorce is like the hitting the eject button on the F-fighter, the F-150. That's a truck. On the fighter plane, I don't know what they're called. You just get rocketed out of that ship plane thing, and then you're falling down. Oh boy, we need to maybe find a different analogy. But anyways, divorce is a big deal. It really does impact people in really deep and profound ways, whether it be financially, that's a crazy deal. Emotionally, lots of people relate it to like grief, because there's a big sense of loss when it comes to divorce. Not only the loss of the marriage, but the loss of the future. You were telling a story, right? And all of a sudden in the middle of it, the story gets cut off, and now you have to come tell a completely different story. And that story that you were telling dies. And Jordan Peterson talks a lot about how when we're kind of forecasting ourselves into the future, kind of pushing our minds and our hopes and our dreams into the future, that oftentimes we find that those parts of us have to die in order to make room for new parts and other stories. And divorce is a really big kind of chop to this story. So yeah, divorce is obviously incredibly and deeply impactful in so many different ways. Growing up, my parents got a divorce when I was fairly young. They separated for a really long time. A lot of that had to do with unhealthy marriage dynamics and especially chemical dependency. Chemical dependency and divorce run rampant in my family. And so a lot of us have had to battle that, do battle. My siblings a lot of them have done an immense amount of battling in their lives to get healthy, based on our family's strong history of unhealthy marriages, divorces, chemical dependency. Those are our family's primary areas of struggle, and they definitely repeat themselves. And so, yeah, a lot of us have had to kind of battle that out. So growing up, I didn't really know what a marriage should look like. I didn't see a marriage that I would have wanted, and I didn't get a picture. I wasn't shown an example of what marriage can be, of how it can be, what it can be like when it's beautiful, when it's sustainable, when it's intentionally prioritized. And that's not to say that early on I didn't see some good things, but eventually, especially during some incredibly formative years, between 12 and 18 for me, and then obviously for you, it might be a different age range or a start range, there was just absence. And it left kind of a gaping hole in my knowledge and understanding of marriage. My picture of marriage was not real. I didn't have an idea of marriage that connected to reality. I didn't understand it. And I knew that I really wanted one. I knew that I really wanted a healthy one. Growing up, I always knew I wanted to be married, and I wanted to get married so that I could lavish. So I could lavish all of this love that I had. And so I just felt like I had so much love to give. I wanted to give that love, and I wanted so desperately to find that person. And eventually I did. And I started lavishing. And then my idea of what marriage was going to be like and how good I was going to be at it, because I had all this love to lavish on this person, came into conflict. And the picture kind of broke for me because I didn't have a realized picture of what marriage really should be like, what it could be like, how it's hard, how it's really difficult, how it's stressful, and how much sacrifice is involved. So I didn't really understand any of that. Now, you could make an argument that none of us do. All of us kind of walk into marriage not knowing that it's going to take a ton of sacrifice and that it's going to be really difficult and that there are going to be some really crummy times in the story. But I do believe that is true. Marriage and mentorship are important because when you're able to find people who have come before you, who have done marriage well, you're able to then model your marriage, model your steps after their dance, model your path after their steps, model your story after what they've already written. And it can be an incredibly freeing thing to find someone who has the marriage that you want to have, and then to just, court them, like build a relationship with them and understand what they did to have that result. And if you can build that relationship, if you can find someone who has the marriage that you would want to have when you're their age, and you can pursue them, and you can, take them out to coffee and pick their brain and ask them what they did and ask them where they failed and find out their whole history and where was their joy and where was their suffering and how did they move through the different seasons of life. That can create the map, especially if you didn't get one, or if you're just struggling in finding your way through your marriage. Finding a mentor who has done it before can make that process much smoother, much easier, and is a great asset when we're talking about creating sustainability in your marriage. So if you don't have an example of someone in your life that has come before you, and you are struggling to kind of tell your marriage story, you're struggling in a certain specific area, right? Maybe you're struggling sexually. Maybe you're struggling financially. Maybe you're struggling in parenting. Maybe you're struggling to prioritize. Maybe you're struggling because your husband or wife isn't hearing you and they're not taking your words or your cries for help seriously. Sometimes establishing a mentor relationship, or having already established a mentor relationship, you can tap into wisdom beyond your understanding in a way that's a little bit different than reading a book, listening to a podcast, looking at a TED Talk, doing any of those things. Mentorship is powerful because it's a relational tool, and it uplifts in a specific way, right? When you're just reading a book about marriage, that's one thing. When you're talking to someone who's lived a marriage and has the marriage that you want to have, that's another thing. And this is kind of a life principle. This isn't really a marriage principle specifically. It's more of a principle of life that we are now also applying to marriage. So, if you want to be successful in your finances, go listen to Dave Ramsey. Go take his class. Do the every dollar budget. Download his app. The Total Money Maker, or read his book. Because if you want to have success in finances, he's essentially created a way to like a foolproof way where if anyone works the system in the way that the system is supposed to be worked, you will have success, and you will not want in the long term. Obviously, there'll be some sacrifice, but that's okay too. If you want to be a successful business person, finding business people and talking to them and dating them, and not dating in the sense of like dating, but like dating, like pursuing relationship with them in a platonic way, and in a way that builds that mentor-mentee dynamic. If you're interested in real estate, go listen to Bigger Pockets, especially their Real Estate Rookie podcast. That's a really, really good one. We live in an era, we live in an age where information is limitless. Essentially, there is more information than time that we will be here on this earth. And so if you have a desire to learn about parenting or acting or how to build a robot or how to wrestle a crocodile, there are books and people and podcasts and movies and documentaries and like information. There's just information everywhere. And so go and seek that out and find people that have done that. Find a person that has something that you really are interested in or would really want. And so in this case, and what we're specifically going to hone in on is like finding a marriage, a dynamic that you see between two people, right? That you can observe, that is how you want to be observed or feel, that it's like they almost make you feel the way that you want to feel about your spouse or partner in the future. Like the way that they look at each other, the way that they interact with one another. When I finally found a mentor, I've been super blessed with mentorship. I've been always looking for a mentor, and I have been very blessed in mentorship, right? Like been given these two incredible men in my life to be my mentors. The first one I found was in college, and I saw him interacting with his children. I saw him having success in his career. I saw him engage with his wife, and I thought, like, if I created this family for myself, like if this was the family that I created, that would be amazing. Like that's what I want. I want to create a family like this. I want to create a marriage like this. I want to feel this way about my wife. I want my wife to feel this way about my husband. I want to work hard with her. I want to be hospitable with her. I want to be, a blessing to others with her. I want this freedom that they have. I want this, there was a really beautiful dynamic in the season that I interacted with this mentor, and continue to interact with this mentor, that it was just this wonderful, beautiful picture. And it uplifted me from my, like, sitting in this mucky, gross, like, version of what marriage has looked like and does look like for so many people in my family. Because again, it's all over the divorce rates and just, chemical dependency and all that stuff. So it took the picture of marriage from that and it elevated it. So I had something to kind of strive toward. Oh boy, this is another Jordan Peterson principle. I had something to strive toward, right? A marriage to look forward toward to. And I had something to run, sprint, gazelle away from. Different context, but I think it works. So having both of those things, right? Like, and positioning yourself in between to say, I'm not going to make choices that lead me down toward my specific family's traps, the traps that our genes have, the traps that our modeling has, the traps that my family tends to fall into. And I'm also going to point myself upward toward this marital idea, toward this marital story, toward this dynamic that I have observed. And I'm going to do things that bring me closer to that and further away from that. And I'm pointing with my hands as I'm doing that. So just like I'm pointing down and away, and then I'm pointing up to the right. There you go. Behind the scenes look. This is really important. And like, it's not that the marriage that I saw was perfect, but it did elevate my understanding and picture of marriage. And I'm so very grateful for that picture. I'm so very grateful to that man and that woman, to that whole family, really, because they gave me hope. And hope is a powerful, powerful thing. So I pursued this person very much. I spent time with him. I took him out to lunch. Maybe he took me out to lunch. Probably that. I was pretty poor. We acted together. He was my director. He was my professor. I went over to his house for dinner. I just really, really leaned into this relationship, knowing for some reason that I really needed a picture. I needed something to look at to elevate my understanding of what marriage is in order to achieve the kind of marriage that I want to achieve. I've also been blessed with a really wonderful mentor in work. And like if I basically, that same dynamic, I want to be that same guy in 20 years. The guy that is doing so well, the guy that is so like full in his schedule and very, very desired to see. People love seeing him. He's brilliant and phenomenal, and I love him dearly. And he has created and elevated my picture for counseling and what it means and how it's supposed to go. And so we meet every other month-ish and spend a couple hours or an hour together. I talk to him almost every day, and I started that really early on before I even kind of formalized. I don't think I ever formalized it, but I just continue to pursue him pretty relentlessly, and he's open to it. So it's great. And I think there is some mutual benefit. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't continue. But I just love my mentors. Shout out to my mentors. You guys are awesome. Finding that person who elevates your picture of marriage and then pursuing them in relationship is a training ground for you to achieve what they have already achieved in marriage. When you've built a relationship with this person and you're able to talk through the nitty-gritty, you're able to share, you're able to be known, you're able to be connected with, seen and appreciated and understood in that mentorship, it opens the door for creating that elevated picture of marriage in your life. If you don't have a picture because your parents, didn't provide you one, or maybe they did, but it's not the one that you want. Maybe you would like something else in your marriage, maybe something that your parents didn't have, even though they didn't do a bad job. Finding someone that has come before you and done it is incredibly powerful, and you will benefit greatly over time from having that. Now, mentorship takes work, just like all relationships. And one thing that should be self-evident is that you don't necessarily want to be looking for a mentor in crisis, because you're not seeing an elevated picture when you're in crisis. Your lens, your ability to see around you and to notice and to observe and to find is going to be greatly reduced. What is beneficial is finding that picture of marriage that you want and pursuing relationship with that person outside of the moments of crisis that are going to bring you into a need for that mentorship. So you want to create the mentorship. You want to create a relationship with someone who has the kind of marriage that you want before you're before you need it, right? Before you're like in this crisis spot and you need to lean on somebody and you need to ask them difficult questions and you need to say, hey, parenting is looking like this and it sucks and it's so hard. You don't want to go looking for a mentor in that state. In my experience, I was very open to mentorship. And whenever I found a man that connected with my idea of what I wanted my marriage to look like and who elevated my picture of marriage, I pursued him really strongly. we spent a lot of time together and developed a really wonderful kind of mutual relationship. If you run into someone who has a marriage that you would like to emulate, that you would like to have, that you would like to create in your own life, pursuing them and building that relationship, creating that mutual respect and knowledge and understanding and connection is going to bless you when you really need to be leaning on your community, your support system. And I think it's necessary when you're putting together your marriage to have that clear picture of where you're going. So how do you find a mentor? I think that's a really good question. Finding a mentor can be extremely difficult because what if there isn't anyone in your circles or around you that is providing you that picture, like elevating your picture, telling that story? What if there isn't really anyone? And I would say that is a different problem. Like there's a lot of different hurdles that come with finding and establishing a relationship with a mentor. The first hurdle is finding someone who does that for you and who you would like to build that relationship with. If you're struggling to find someone, obviously listening to Marriage is the Best, reading. Oh man, yeah, reading. So you could read Gottman. You could read any of Gottman's stuff. We'll tell you a lot about the science of marriage and what we know about it and how to do it well. You could go to counseling, I suppose, to understand, principles of marriage and start practicing them and find kind of that mentor-like relationship because, counseling often is providing different kinds of relationships that we're unable to find in real life, whether it be finding a father figure, finding a mother figure, finding a mentor, finding filling some of those roles and practicing them in a safe environment and then launching, to the world and then, moving on from that. So counseling could do that. If you want to go seek some counseling, you could go find a mentor or a coach. In fact, my mentor happens to be a mentor and coach for marriages, which is really cool. But ultimately what you're really looking for is a person, a man, if you're a man, or a woman, if you're a woman, who is doing a really wonderful job. And you have to kind of put yourself in positions where you're going to be able to see that and find that and kind of be open to that in order to find a marriage like that. One reason that we started the podcast and are talking about our years of our marriage, slowly but surely, wink, wink, is that we want to provide a model for people who don't have one. We not that you want our marriage. Our marriage is hard. Our marriage is difficult. It's a struggle. It's real. It's a very real marriage. And, but it's really beautiful. It's really fun. It's dynamic. It's never boring. It's challenging. And so it's not the idea that you definitely want our marriage, so follow us. It's more, we are working really hard in our marriage. And if you don't have anyone to look to in your own marriage and in your own life, then maybe you could start here. Yeah, that would be pretty cool if you're able to glean some encouragement and an elevated picture, an elevated picture of conversations or of conflict or different things. And then also talking about principles and talking about things that make marriage work and talking about, sustainable systems, which is my obsession. That's all good too. So once you've found the person, I think I went through like 5 or 6 different people who either pursued me and I wasn't in a season where I could enter into mentorship at the time. People tried to be father figures when I was between 12 and 18. I had some really awkward conversations with people between 12 and 18 trying to fulfill that role because I don't think I was ready. I wasn't open to it yet. And you can't, you can lead a horse to water, but you definitely can't make her drink. So being open is really important principle. Looking around, finding that person. Once you've found a person, then pursuing that person. And, there's a lot of factors that might make it difficult for you to connect with them. they might not be ready. They might not be in a time or season where they're able to provide that. There's a lot of different barriers that, again, could be put in your way in order for you to create this. Jordan Peterson does a really great job of this. Honestly, he's got a marriage deal and talks really wonderfully and sweetly about his marriage and his life and his wife. I think that they have an admirable marriage. So whether it's a public figure or a book or a podcast or some other form of connecting with someone's story, like those are great supplemental, like in between mentors where you can learn and grow and start to like maybe know what you're looking for. But really there is no substitute for finding a person who you can talk to, who appreciates and knows you, who can speak life into your marriage, and who will always encourage you toward her or him, depending on which side you are of the marriage. I don't know. So you'll have to fill in that gap. So yeah, mentorship is powerful. Mentorship is really cool, and it's definitely worth pursuing, and it's definitely worth developing over time. It took probably like 2 or 3 years before I really, really solidified both my mentorships, I would say. We didn't really formalize the relationship at work I was probably working 2 or 3 years before we started meeting regularly, maybe even longer. And then in college, it definitely took 2 or 3 years to develop that kind of relationship. That's why it's so important to be open to it and look for it kind of like regularly, like as an ongoing process, because it takes quite a long time to develop the kind of relationship that can be that supportive. So I hope you enjoyed it. And that's all. If you listen to this and you're at this point, this is like 30 minutes in. So you spent 30 minutes with me. So I'm going to ask you to put your mouse over the stars on iTunes or Spotify and click the 5th star from the left. So just count like 1 star, 2 stars, 3 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars, going left to right, not right to left. And then click that 5th star. What that will do is something good. And it will help other people maybe organically find this voice thing that you're listening to. Again, I don't feel that bad asking because it's really just one mouse click. If you want to take that above and beyond and like write something wonderful and flowery about the content, then that's great too. But that's not what I'm asking of you. I just want you to count to 5, left to right, and then just click you could do it now. Like you can just like, you could click it, like the 5th one on the right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a good one. Continue to pursue your marriage, and it's the best. Bye, everybody. Can be an incredibly freeing and maybe not freeing. What am I trying to say? Finding that person that elevates your picture of what marriage is allows you to create a path forward for yourself. No, that's not exactly what I want to say. What I'm going to ask you to do today, and I don't usually do this because I think it's gross, but I'm just going to ask you to actually just put your mouse. I'm going to